Today we're talking to Meghan Howard about content fatigue. Oh, you've experienced it. Let's see how you can deal with it. Now it's time.
Holy nuclear time bombs! Holy overeating! Holy roller coasters!
It's time!
It's time.
It's time for the YM Sidekick Podcast!
Hello, heroes. I'm Tom Pounder, and this is the YM Sidekick Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk to ministry leaders about digital tools and trends that are happening around the world and how we can apply it into our ministry context. And I'm really excited today for our interview with Meghan Howard. Meghan is a good friend of mine who's been on the podcast numerous times. And today we're going to talk about content fatigue. Content fatigue is something that we've all experienced, especially recently, because when the coronavirus first hit months ago, people were producing a bunch of content and therefore you were consuming a bunch of content. So whether you really realized it or not, you were experiencing content fatigue. You were just inundated with so much content, you didn't know how to process it all and deal with it. So how do you really effectively deal with content fatigue? That's why Meghan's on the podcast with me today. So I'm really excited about our conversation as we talk about how you can effectively deal with content fatigue today, and frankly, every day that you're feeling that content fatigue. So without any further ado, let's get in the interview right now with Meghan Howard and how to deal with content fatigue. All right, with me right now is my friend Meghan Howard. Meghan, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Tom.
That's good. How is things in Ohio? How are things in Ohio?
Well, we are, so at this point in May, which is May 20th currently, when we are recording this, we are about 95% opened up from the coronavirus standpoint. So I think we've got a lot of mixed feelings with how people are. Some are liking it and some are still pretty hesitant.
Yeah, this is it's definitely a very interesting thing for sure. And every area, it's kind of funny because I've been talking to different people from all over the country, and every area is in different stages. Again, we're a little bit behind you in Virginia. We're behind you on where we are in our phases. We haven't even gotten to phase 1 yet, although we will be there, I think, in the next few days. So it's very interesting how this has impacted all the communities and impacted the world. Before we get into what we want to talk about, again, just highlight for people where you're at, what you do. Go from there.
So I'm in Fairborn, Ohio, which is about, it's right outside of Dayton, Ohio, if anybody's familiar with that. So I have kind of two roles. I'm a bi-vocational pastor. My 40-hour-a-week job essentially is I'm the communications manager for the city of Fairborn. And then I'm also the one of the pastors on staff at Fairborn United Methodist Church, and I preach every Sunday, lead worship, but I also do all of our digital content.
And you do, I mean, again, we talked before. One of our podcasts we did a while back was you shared about your bivocationalness and how you juggle. I can't imagine how you're juggling what you're doing right now, considering your role. How do you stay sane considering your role?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. I'm pretty sure it's only by the grace of God that I haven't gone insane yet. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about it because again, you're a content creator and you provide a ton of content for the city and for the church. So let's talk about content fatigue. Okay.
Yeah.
I love when we were talking about this topic before we got on, I was really excited about it because again, the great thing about there's not a lot of great things about the coronavirus and everything like that, but what it has done is it's really mobilized a lot of people and it's gotten people energized, especially from an online perspective. Like my father, who's older, he is now doing Zoom calls. And he's using a lot of technology. So it's really cool to see a lot of the different generations using technology and getting a bunch of different content from different sources. However, that can create content fatigue, as we were talking about. So talk to me about content fatigue from your perspective, you being the provider. How are you dealing with content fatigue, or how are you experiencing it? And then how are you dealing with it?
Yeah. So, just to kind of preface, content fatigue is when there is basically so much information out there, you don't have time to process it all. And it's just kind of this vicious cycle that you can get into, and eventually you just get tired. You get fatigued with all the content that's out there. So from a content provider standpoint, what can happen then is you burn out, which, looking at a lot of the groups, communication groups that I'm on, I've slowly seen this happen. And it's even happened to me a couple of times through this whole thing. There's this constant need, especially when things change on a daily basis, it feels like, to push out information. And, when we're constantly viewing all of it, it just becomes so much. And so, for me, there have been moments when at 5 o'clock, when my city job ends, I shut things off, because I need to. I know I need to get church stuff out there at times, but I know if I'm feeling content fatigued and burnt out by this, I know our people are too. And so it's got to be a fine balance with it all.
Yeah, I've created a bunch of unhealthy habits right now, honestly, with me, because I produce a lot of content with the student ministry that I'm doing, and also the online stuff that we're doing at our church. And I'm constantly looking at my phone, and to the point where I'll put my phone down, less than 5 minutes later, I'll look again and thinking that there's new content, because early on, like, there was so much content happening so quickly. I remember in Virginia, our governor, on Wednesday, we were in this phase. Then on Thursday, we were on that phase. And then on Friday, we were in a completely different phase. We went from being kind of open as a church to not being able to be open at all so quickly, in a matter of 36 to 48 hours. And it was just a lot. So you're pushing out a lot of content. You're getting a lot of content, which is overwhelming. And then you have to be responsible for pushing it out. Okay, talk to me. Do you really disconnect? Like, do you turn off your phone? Do you turn off your computer? Like, what do you do? How do you disconnect? How does Meghan disconnect?
I sleep. No, and so I guess I would say nothing gets turned off. And, again, that's a work in progress. But, my disconnect is I'll cook dinner. I'll sit and just watch a TV show with my kids. They're doing homeschool stuff. So it's, they've got stuff they've got to work on, and I'll just shut everything off and deal with that. But unfortunately, because of what we do for a living, it is very hard to disconnect. But we need to. And I was reading something the other day about this. When we don't, the content that we push out is impacted. And so it can be more detrimental if we don't take care of ourselves, when we have content fatigue from this standpoint, because the content that we're pushing out, it's just to check a box and get it done, which is a problem. And that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to say, okay, what can I do to just take a step back, so that my content is as good as it needs to be. And I'm not, wanting to bite somebody's head off because they asked a dumb question, or just trying to get answers that we don't currently have. So it's take a walk outside, just get away for a minute from it all. But that, I think, is important, is that the content that we want to produce, especially in the church, when it is important information, not that the other isn't, but when it's kingdom stuff, we want to make sure that it's the best that we can give, and we can't give the best that we can give when we are fatigued on the other side.
This is awesome, because I completely agree with you. I think in an ideal world, we want to disconnect. And when we think of disconnect, we think we got to turn off our phones, turn off our computers and everything. And there's an element of that for sure. But where I found myself was that I found myself at 9 o'clock in the evening time, like feeling guilty that I wasn't working at 9 o'clock at night when I'd been working all day. And I felt guilty. I'm like, I need to be doing this. I need to be pushing out this content. I need to be pushing out this video. I need to create this thing. And it was so unhealthy that even, again, when I was watching TV, I felt guilty. I had to have my computer in front of me while I was watching TV to be producing content. Like, I have to, one of the things I've discovered about myself is I actually have to take walks now. And I'm a jogger, and actually I'm not even really a good jogger, but I jog. That's how one of my exercises. But I literally take about 2 walks a day, one in the morning time and one in the evening time, just to get out and get some fresh air and get out there. Because if you don't, and if you're constantly in your computer, on your phone, you're gonna hurt. And and I know I'm not sleeping well either. And that's another side effect of just constantly working. So you have to take care of yourself for that very reason that you said.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard. I mean, especially now when we're all working at home. I had a friend tell me, she's like, I work more now than I do when I'm at work. She said, because there's no check in and check out. I'm at home and it's always work because this is where work is right now. And so I think we need to be even more cognizant of the fact that we have to take time to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. I know you're a runner. So have you been running a lot, or how are you doing with that?
I have not, and unfortunately, it was either cold or raining. We've had an enormous amount of rain in Ohio these past couple months, so it's virtually impossible. It feels like, and just because of life and schedules, kids being at home all the time, it makes it even harder. So I have not, and my body's telling me that it doesn't like me for that.
No, I completely get it. Okay, so you have to take care of yourself as a content provider, but now as we're pushing out content to those, especially let's take your church position, and we'll talk about it from a church perspective.
Yep.
The constant need. When I know that when this all happened, we did a quick rush to, okay, we've got to get everything online. We've got to update everybody on what's happening. And we've got to do all this online stuff. So therefore we have to tell everybody about that. And we've got to get on social media. We've got to get on emails and tell everyone. We've got to text people. We've got to create all these videos, and we're pushing content. What does that do to the parishioner or the person in the congregation when we're constantly pushing out that content?
It is overwhelming to them.
Yes.
Especially when we know there are people that aren't used to being online who are now all of a sudden online. They're getting all of this information at once, and it is literally content overload. And we keep seeing in some of our groups that we're in, hey, have you seen a dip in online worship attendance? And there was this huge rush at the very beginning because everybody was wanting to see what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we're slowly seeing the effects of that content fatigue from their side, as we do see some of those things kind of lapse. Just again, that they're consuming as much as we are pushing out.
Yeah. Well, and because you had said this off before we started recording, but I think before we started recording, whatever, but you had said that because we're pushing out this content, but so is every other company and so many people. So they're not just getting emails from you as a church, which you could be doing way too much than you normally do, but they're getting emails from Pepsi Cola. They're getting from the hotels they've stayed at before. They're getting a plethora of emails. So how do you determine what content you should be pushing out, and how do you balance all that stuff?
So I know for us, I went less is more at this point. I used to post probably twice a day on all of our channels, well, at least Facebook and Twitter, because that's what we use the most. And there are moments I do every other day, just to lessen it. And when I do make them, it's an intentional post, purposeful. Whether it's about upcoming, service opportunities. This is where we want you to connect with our community, or just a fun, hey, lighthearted, how you doing? What's your favorite ice cream flavor? Whatever those engagement posts are. But I've shifted completely, just to lessen the noise that's out there, because there's so much. Tom, I have emails from companies that I subscribe to that I didn't even remember subscribing to. Like, apparently I did, 10 years ago, and now they decided to send me an email to tell me their, new plan. And it's just little things like that if we can lessen, the content, just to ease some of that, the content that we then do produce, in my opinion, will be more valuable because it's not something they keep seeing all the time.
Yeah.
It's like the person that never talks, but when they do, they say something really good and intelligent, and you want to make sure you hear it. Sometimes we don't have to do all the talking, but when we do, we need to make sure that it's worthwhile.
So what have you found then to be an appropriate balance then in for like in the height of the pandemic, what were you producing like email wise, and then what are you producing now? Like were you like my church, we were producing emails every day, sometimes multiple times a day, which was just so overwhelming. And what have you found to be like the right balance between like videos that you're producing and sharing that out, or even emails or social media posts? What's a good balance for you right now?
That's a good question. And I don't even know that we have a good balance. We do about one email a week, and we only ever used to do it the most. Well, even during this, we only did maybe 3 or 4, which was a lot for us to produce.
Yeah.
I think typically we do about 2 a week, just depending on what the information is. But I think we're at 1, and it's just a huge, hey, this is what's happened. These are what things have changed, and it usually happens later in the week, only because by the end of the week, most things that have changed will have happened by then.
Yeah.
We don't have to, say, okay, well, we said this yesterday, but now this has changed, so we have to alter this. And really the same thing on social media. I mean, it's, again, I've gone less, and the old adage is, well, your algorithm's going to suffer and your content's not going to be seen. And I've not seen that be the case. Again, if people will engage with your stuff if what you have out is quality content, not how many times you put it out there. But so I don't know that I have a good answer for the balance, other
Well,
than
no,
be
but
intentional.
I think you're right on that, in the sense of you have to be smart in what you're sharing. You can't be reactionary, I don't think.
Right.
And I think a lot of what my church and other churches were doing, at least initially, was we were reacting to the news, and we felt like that we had to get on this. And honestly, people saw it as an opportunity to connect
Mhm.
with people. And so they're like, we've got to get this out there. We've got to get this out there. And I think if we're just patient and we're just steady and balance it right, I think we can, again, produce the quality content that is out there, rather than rushing to get content out there just to get content out there.
Right.
Again, it doesn't matter if you're producing content if it sucks.
Right.
Right. I mean, so, and if someone will look at your video and say, wow, this is not very good, I'm not going to watch this again, And so, are you guys doing any kind of video, like devotionals or video reflections that you've been optimizing more in this time period than you were before?
We have, not necessarily for social. We have like our other pastors doing Zoom video Bible studies. So I mean, we're starting to kind of shift, knowing that we're not going to be back for a while, to more community building opportunities that way. But we've not done a whole lot, and our people are very flexible, and realize that he and I both work other jobs, and uh, if they need something in that regard, they kind of call and ask us. But we do a lot of Sunday morning. I produce all of our videos for Sunday morning and record them, edit them, upload them. But that, again, it's is a weird moment of life,
Yeah.
and it's just trying to figure out how to live into that weird moment and do the best you can.
What has been one positive thing that you've come out of this time period thinking? Again, it doesn't have to be a digital thing, it doesn't have to be a content thing, but what is one positive thing that you've seen God do, or something that happens in your community that you're really excited about?
So I've enjoyed, anytime I have shared our Sunday morning worship services. Um, Everybody's watching. It doesn't matter who it is. And I've been able to reconnect with people who I was, a pastor at other churches before.
Mm.
And they've watched us, and they've been a part of what we're doing. And we've had online services for a while, but because everybody else is at church, they don't get to see it. And so
Right.
it's been really neat to see people that I'm friends with who may never go to church. Um, they've they've said, "Hey, we caught your service, and it was what we needed to hear."
Mm.
And so for me, it makes all the hours waiting for YouTube to upload a video worth it. um, and I think another thing that I've seen, not necessarily church related, but especially within our own community, is just the sense of caring for other people. like our teachers here are amazing, and they have gone above and beyond anything to care for their students. We had a preschool teacher who made sure that her preschool students got to graduate. And
Mhm.
so she had individually, she had 13 kids. She had individually went to their houses and had a graduation ceremony. And then she had a friend that just happened to be kind of sheltering in place here in Ohio from New York. He's a photographer, and he did preschool graduation photos of all
Oh,
of them. And it's just those little ways that people are thinking outside the box, which
mhm.
I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And learning different ways and creative ways to care for people, and to show each other that they matter too. It's been fun to watch and see.
Yeah, and see, I think even if I want to bring this back to the whole content creation thing and whatnot, again, you can create all this content and push it out, push it out, push it out. But the reality is, I mean, and those are helpful things and they're important things to do. But the relational aspect of ministry and seeing communities come together,
Yeah.
I'm reading a book right now on visual intelligence. It's
Mm.
weird, but I just about just seeing things that are happening that you didn't normally see just because you were too busy.
Yeah.
And I think part of what this has helped me do, even though I hate being stuck at home a lot, is that I go on walks and I look around and I spend time. I've noticed more people in my community over the last 2 months than I have ever. And I've lived in this community for 15 years.
Mm.
And so it's just, I've had more conversations, albeit social distance
Right.
conversations, but more conversations with people. And I see people caring for each other. I see, like what you said, people thinking outside the box. And it's still, again, God moves in great ways, and he moves through relationships in so many powerful ways. And so I think that's been really fun for me to see as well.
Yeah. And it's a difference in perspective, right? I
Mhm.
mean, and sometimes we need a different perspective in order to see things the way that they need to be seen.
Yeah.
So I think through all of this, it's definitely changed my perspective on many things. And I don't know that I would have got the same perspective had this not happened.
Yeah. If that, yeah. So there's a lot of great valuable lessons here that we can learn if we just take the time to really kind of reflect on it. I hope people who are listening are reflecting on things like this and slowing down and not feeling the rush that they have to produce content and share and go crazy and work, that they can take time and watch a movie and not feel guilty, and
Yeah.
spend time with their kids and not feel like they're missing out on something else that is happening in some other place. So
And
um
to add to that,
yeah.
the world will still turn.
Yes.
Life will continue if we take a break, and it's okay.
Exactly right. I mean, again, that's exactly right. I'm not even going to add on to that. It's so true. So well, Megan, this was fantastic talking with you. I always love talking with you. How can people connect with you? I know you're on social media, and so how can people connect with you?
I'm on the Twitters at Rev
Twitter.
Howard, the Twitters at Rev Howard 18. And I'm just Meghan Howard on Facebook. If you want to listen to a podcast that me and a good friend of mine have, it's Two Church Girls and a Microphone. Uh, Pretty fun. We try to do it every once in a while. But
Yeah, I mean, you guys are great. You guys are great. Um, I will have all those links in the show notes. But have you guys been recording lately?
we have not, just because life has happened. So
Yeah, but
we're trying.
okay. But there's a plethora of episodes down there, and you guys do record. So I mean,
Yeah.
you keep subscribing to it. I'll have all those links on there. And again, Megan is on Twitter, which is, again, my personal favorite. So I think
Yes.
everyone should be on Twitter.
Yep, I agree.
So, all right, Megan, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Tom, thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, so there you have it, Meghan Howard. It's great talking with her. And here's the deal. Again, a lot of us have one job. and a lot of us who are listening to this podcast, well, I think a lot of us have one job. She's got multiple jobs, and she's producing 2 completely different pieces of content, one for the church, one for the city. And so she understands the content fatigue. She understands producing so much content that it's overwhelming for people, and it's overwhelming for the people producing the content. And so the question is, how do you effectively deal with content fatigue? She talked about a few different things that she does. I talked about how I go on walks and I have to shut my computer. The reality is you can overwhelm yourself. You can burn out yourself by just going all the time. And while we may have shifted into this new normal where we're at right now compared to where Megan and I were recording this episode back in May, it's still very dangerous. And if you don't watch yourself, you're going to burn out, and you're going to burn out the people you're trying to communicate the vital information to. Not just vital information of like what's happening and when is it, but really important information like how do you become a disciple, or great things that are happening, great stories that are happening. People are going to overlook it and miss it because they've experienced so much content, and they're experiencing that content fatigue. So I'm curious to see what you're doing and how you're dealing with content fatigue and what you're doing there. Let's get online. Go to Twitter, hit me up at @TA Pounder. I would love to carry this conversation online with you, and we can help each other. I would love to learn from you, and as well as we can all learn from each other. So get online and let's do that today. All right, heroes, well, that wraps it up for another episode of the YM Sidekick podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. Go to iTunes and subscribe to this, Spotify and subscribe to it. You can go to YM Sidekick and subscribe to this as well. So go to YM Sidekicks, where I got all the blogs and podcasts and vlogs there as well. I'm working on some new vlogs as well, so that should be pretty cool there. But also go to the Digital Bootcamp Facebook group. It's an opportunity for all ministers to get together and learn digital tools and trends that are happening around the world, and we apply it into our ministry context, and we just learn from each other. It's a great Facebook community, so we'd love for you to be a part of that. Again, you can go to Facebook for that, or you can just go to ymsidekick.com, and I've got a link there to the Digital Bootcamp. All right, heroes, well, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and until next time, have a great one.